Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about mullah. Yes, sweet money, sweet pay in the military. Obviously military pay is very different. I'm going to be talking specifically about Royal Air Force. I'm pretty sure it's the same throughout the tri-service. But obviously military pay system and structure is very different than what it's like in Civvy Street. So maybe you haven't gone in yet, you're in training, or maybe you've been in for a little while and you just really don't understand how the sort of pay system works, how it's incentivized and things like that. Hopefully this video can help you out and make it easier to understand. So the key point to focus on with pay is the basically split off into two parts. You've got your basic pay, let's call it basic pay, and then you've got a sort of additional pay, although obviously it's technically not sort of laid out on your pay slip, although that's how we're going to separate for this video to make it more clear and understand. So first things first, basic pay is sort of name on a tin. It's how long you served and it's your rank as well. So I'm an AS1, so I believe our pay starts like 25, 26, 28. I'm not too sure which one it is. But every year you spend in that role, it will go up. So I believe because I hit a year cut in May when I actually joined, I think my pay went up to the next one. So I think now it's like 29 or 30, something like that. I might be wrong. Again, I don't know the exact figures, but just to give you guys some idea, you could probably look online to the exact sort of like the exact numbers of what you can earn. But let's just put it into perspective. Let's say I get promoted to corporal, okay? So let's just say there's 5 bands that you can climb in the rank of corporal. So let's say I go in as the bottom, but let's call the bottom bands like 5, for example, and then obviously number 1 being the top one. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 31k a year. Now, that's what you go from, you just say you're AS1, you go from 27, you jump up to obviously 31, being a corporal, and then it sort of resets. So you might have been on the band 1 of AS1, for example, because you've done, 3, 4, whatever, however many years, how many bands there are, and you jump there. Now you're back down the bottom again of band 5 as corporal, but obviously your money has increased because you're in the next rank up. But then the same concept goes. So every year for, let's say for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the case may be, it will go up. And obviously when you get promoted again, you'll go down to band 5. You get the idea. Okay, so that's the sort of main concept. Now there is this other sort of factor. I guess you could say it's, it's like an additional pay, but to sort of give an idea of it, I think it's called like 4 pay structure or 4 something, I don't know what it is, 4 something. I remember seeing it, it's like 4 and then pay system, pay support, pay structure, pay something. So basically the way this works is let's say there's 4 different bands, okay? And let's say there's bands again at 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when you actually get your pay slips, like for me, it's obviously other ranks. Obviously officers have their own pay slips. I don't know if they're the exact same, but I assume they work the same or similar. And the way it works is that when you see it sort of, they'll probably actually say multiple times. I can't unfortunately show a pay slip on here, but there'll be multiple points in that sort of pay slip where you'll see OR, or again, whatever the officer ranks is, I don't know. But for other ranks, AS1s, 2s, techs, chief, techs, flight sergeants, sergeants, corporals, all the basically non-commissioned officer roles, or ranks, sorry, it'll be OR. And then you have 2 numbers next to it. And I believe, if I'm not too 100% sure on this, but I know one of them is basically the 4-band sort of scale, and obviously the other number is how long you've served in that rank, I'm pretty sure. So let's just say, obviously there's 4 bands, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say this time 1 is the sort of lowest end and 4 is the higher end. So the way they depict this, and I don't really know the best way to really word it, it's not how important your role is, it's more how responsible your role is, if that makes sense. Now obviously every role is critical, and you need even chefs obviously to keep people fed, other things like that, but it's more like for the techies, the ones working on aircrafts. If something, you have to be very, very strict of it. If something was to go wrong, you've lost £1 million worth of equipment, but more importantly, you've got fatalities, whether that's whether that's the pilot or civilian, because let's say crashed into a residential area. Let's say, give an example. Obviously, it's very, very important they get everything right. So their pay scale is the higher end, I believe, and it might not just be techs; it could be other roles as well. I don't know if interns are on that. I don't know how it works. I believe mine is like the 2nd or 3rd one is between the 2, or bang in the middle if there's a middle one, and it just basically shows how, I don't want to use important because every role is important, but how responsible, I guess you could say, in terms of like, if you slip up and, in supply and something was to drop on the floor, it might not be that big of a deal, but if you slip up and drop something on the floor in an aircraft and it's an engine part or, something like that, then you see what I'm trying to get at. It's not necessarily how important you are, it's more this sort of, if something was to happen that might seem small in one job, in this job though, it's going to cause some serious issues. And I think that's how they basically word it, if I'm wording that right. Again, that's just my take on it. This might not be the textbook definition, but I'm trying to lay it out for you guys to hopefully understand. So that's basically this sort of basic pay in itself. So the sort of next one is sort of like the additional pay. So the additional pay, the main one that most people are going to see is if you go down all the way down the bottom when you get a pay. So if you haven't yet, obviously don't worry about this, but if you have got one, if you go down near the bottom of the first page, I think there's 2 pages in the pay slip, but the first page, there'll be like a sort of text box at the bottom, and it's got loads of different, it's got your ORs, and it's got, I think it's got your job as well, and sort of other bits like that, is basically something called X Factor. Now, I believe every single role and person will have this X Factor. Now, it's a percentage-based sort of pay system, and it's pensionable as well, I believe, when I read it up correctly. And when I sort of really how would I word this right? If I was to try and conclude it, because it's many different things, but basically let's conclude it as the stresses of military life. Okay, let's just put it like that. They calculate that based on stresses. So what could that mean? Let's say, the fact that you could be moving houses frequently, obviously you could be going on debt, obviously on deployment, people don't know what that means. There are other things like that is the stress of military life that's not the same as what it's like in the civvy street. So obviously that could be, that can be stressful, and I believe they're trying to do that in order to compensate for that. Obviously, if you compensate for it, or whether you feel like they compensate for it is obviously up to you. It's not yes or no, it's all personal opinion, but it's there to try and compensate for it. So another point is allowances. So it could be unique situations, I guess you could say. So if you're sort of separated from family for a certain reason, let's say you had to go away, and that also includes operationals, I guess you could sort of connect them together. So I know for a fact when you're an operational, I believe if you've got a service family accommodation, which is what I've got, a house, you don't pay council tax. And I believe there's other bits like that. I don't know the full extent of it. I was planning on making a video when I do go on debt to really explain that, to hopefully give you guys some idea of how it works. But there are quite a bit of incentives. One thing I do know, when you are deployed, there's, I don't know what the exact name of it is, but basically how long you spend deployed throughout your career, it stacks up, it's permanent. So if you do a 4-month deployment, however many days it is, let's say it's 100 and whatever it is, 20, 108 days, whatever the case may be, then you will, or if you do a 4, 5, 6 month deployment, whatever it is, how long you're deployed, how many it counts on a days, depends on how much more money you get per day. So I think the lowest amount is like 6 to 8 quid or something like that per day that you're deployed. And obviously the more you deploy, I think the maximum is like 1,500 days or like 1,000 days, which is crazy. That's a lot of deployment, and you're earning like 20 odd plus quid a day extra or something like that. Again, I'm pretty sure you can find this online, but just to give you guys some idea. So throughout those 4-month deployments, which is quite the most common one, if you're going Falklands, if you're going Qatar, Cyprus, Gibraltar, whatever it is, then obviously every day you'll be getting a bit more pay. And then obviously when you go on deployment, again, I'll explain this more in a deployment video more specifically, but just to give an idea, you won't pay for food, that'll be all deducted. You wouldn't be paying if you wouldn't be paying for accommodation. Obviously I've got a house, so I'll still be paying for a house, but it'll be reduced in terms of council tax, things like that, I believe so. Whether there are other incentives and benefits, I won't know until I go out, but they're the things I do know, just to give you an idea. And that's why they say, when you go on debt, some people come back for 4 months, which depending on what rank they are, they could save a couple of grand, sometimes even more than that. They save quite a juicy amount of money, because you're just not spending anything out there, because it's all mainly paid for. So it's a very benefit to go on debt. Obviously having a family is a bit more complicated in terms of that, but in terms of finance specifically, it's pretty good gig. And some people even call it a holiday. So it depends on where you go, obviously. And the sort of last one is sort of travel expenses, to really sort of conclude it off. Now, travel expenses is, for example, let's say I went to Horton, okay, and from Horton I went to Cosford, obviously for my phase 2. From basically Horton to Cosford is like 100 plus miles, 100 a bit miles. So what I'll do is you'll go on your deductions on JPA, I believe it is. And again, for people who don't know any of what JPA is, don't worry about it. In a minute, you will find out. So maybe come back to this video when you get to that point. And basically, it's a system you go on, your sort of HR system, I guess you could say. It's not really HR, but it's the way you get to check your money and you get to put things in and holiday and other bits like that. And you'll basically put on there that you're doing travel, and you'll put the amount of miles in, you submit it to HR. Sometimes they ask for evidence, sometimes they ask for, but most of the time they can see from your joining instructions or whatever it's called, assignment order, that you're going there. So that has happened. So they'll calculate it from RAF Horton, for example. For me, it was Cosford, so they'll transfer it to like 100 miles. They figure out how much it is. They have like a gauge of how much it is, and then they'll obviously pay it out in the next paycheck, or sometimes they pay it out like straight away. It all depends on how they're feeling. And another key one in that was the fact of that you get also reductions. So for example, if you're moving, from block to block, then you will get deductions on, people picking up your kit. I'm going to sneeze in a minute. Oh, bless me. So where was I? So yeah, you can get deduction, and it's the same, especially for SFA. Okay, this is where it really hits home for SFA in a good way, is that they will pay for your entire move. Basically, there's an allowance that you can get. However, that is it's quite a substantial amount. So I've never heard someone having to pay extra. So what they'll do is you'll put an order request into a civvy company. There's two ways you could do it. You can either do it yourself, or you do it for the military way. I prefer the military way because the actual company they use is very, very good in my eyes. They're very, very accurate, on time, and they got the job done. So I will definitely use them again. And basically what they do is you'll book it out. You'll do like some call, and then you do some survey, see what needs to be taken. We didn't have a lot of furniture. A lot of our furniture is supplied by the RAF because we just don't have, first time moving into a house, you don't have all the bells and whistles, I guess you can say. And yeah, so they took a bit, and then they sort of calculated it, and we was within our budget, so we didn't have to pay for anything, not one thing. Better than that, and some people was strange, and this was a bit strange, when the people turn up to collect your stuff, you don't do anything. They do everything for you. So in theory, if you want to be that person, you can leave your house exactly as it is, and they'll take everything. I prefer to sort of bag things up in carrier bags, so I know where things are. Obviously, it makes their life a bit easier as well. But, clothes we left hanging up. I told them what to take, what I couldn't. Obviously, if you're going to be staying in a hotel, is what I did, then, you obviously keep that for yourself, put in your car or whatnot. But they will take everything, box it up properly, label everything properly, load it up, and they're done, obviously, depending on how much kit they need to take. For us, as well, lots, it was done relatively quick. So that's another thing that's really to keep in mind. And then the only other thing for SFA specifically is the fact that when you move base, this also comes to block as well, you will get paid a relocation amount, if you will. So this relocation amount, I think it's like 100 quid from block to block, but from family, from SFA, it's like over £1,000, which is quite intense. Now people are like, well, hold on, what's the difference? It's basically the whole point of it. If you couldn't get the same broadband, you've got to pay off the rest of your broadband. Sometimes you have to pay a bit extra because you're cancelling it. There could be other things like that. Maybe gas and electric as well. I don't know if that makes it, but to give you an idea of why there's a bit more is to pay for things like that. And I believe that incorporates fuel as well. So again, guys, that's sort of going to be the end of the video. Hopefully that's cleared it up a little bit more. Again, there's probably little bits here and there, but this is the sort of fundamentals. And I could really talk about the extra benefits that you could get. But again, I just wanted to focus on the sort of main ones that everyone's going to experience. The other stuff is more unique to your situation. And hopefully this is giving it a bit more clarity of how it works, and hopefully the incentive behind promoting and things like that. So yeah, that'll be the end of the video. I hope you guys have found that useful. And I'll see you in the next one, whenever that is. Take care. Bye-bye.